Okay, so we're going to go into writing equations and expressions notes. So Springboard Mobile charges $20 for each gigabyte of data used on any of its smartphone plans. So the first thing they want us to do is copy and complete this table showing the charges for data based on the number of gigabytes used. So one thing that you can use when you're doing these word problems is circling your verbs, so what it's asking you to do, and then underlining your nouns. And what's going to help with that is um, a lot of times with word problems, the thing that's most difficult is just figuring out what it's asking you to do. And so here they want you to copy and complete. And what is that? They're copying and completing the table. So we have our table here, and we are doing $20 for every gigabyte. So the first gigabyte is going to cost $20. 2 gigabytes is $40. 3 is going to be 60, and so on. Then they want you to graph that data from the table. So if we're going to graph that, this is a blank graph, so we have a couple of things that we need to do. We need to, first of all, define what our different axes are going to be. So if we're looking here, our x is going to be this number of gigabytes used, and our y is going to be the total data charge. And we know that because our x value, so the number of gigabytes used, is what we call our independent variable, okay? And then our y value is what we call our dependent variable. And how we know what is our amount that we're charging is dependent on how many gigabytes we've used. Okay, so the amount we're charging here is dependent on the other thing. So that makes it the dependent variable. It is depending on the other variable for us to know what it needs to be. Okay, so x value is number of gigabytes used. And then we're going to have the total charge. And then we want to do is we want to go through our graph here. And first of all, we need to label kind of how we're going to count by and things like that before we can graph. So if we're looking at our x values here, those are just going by ones. And we really only need to go to about 5. So we could even say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we wanted more space, we could have, skipped a box when we did it. And then up here, we're trying to go to 100. So we can actually go 10, 20, 30. So we can count by tens. That's not the only way to do it. You could also count by 20s if you wanted to. It's just kind of your preference as long as everything fits. So then when we go to graph this, we have 1 gigabyte is a $20 charge. So if we go over to 1 gigabyte and then come up to a $20 charge, we're going to put a dot there. Then we have 2 gigabytes is a $40 charge, 3 is 60, 4 is 80, and 5 is going to be 100. So then the question we need to ask ourselves is, should we put a line through our dots? And you need to ask yourself this because your natural tendency is to just think that you're automatically going to put a line through your dots, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you won't. And so to think about that, let's think about what this is talking about. So this is talking about the number of gigabytes that are being used. And so what we want to ask ourselves is, can that number be a decimal? So if I'm talking about the data that I'm using on my phone or something like that, it's not just like 1 GB that I use. Like I could use half of one, I could use a quarter of one. So decimals are allowed in that situation. A situation where decimals wouldn't be allowed would be something like if I'm counting like push-ups. Um, if I'm counting push-ups, it's either the person does a push-up or they don't. There's no half of a push-up or anything like that. So that's kind of the difference there. So here we will draw our line, and we could continue this line on because we could use more gigabytes, which would make us use more money. So then we have patterns can be written as something called sequences. A sequence is a list of numbers, and each number is called a term of the sequence. So let's underline that word term. For example, 2, 4, 6, 8 is a sequence, and 2, 5, 10, 17 are sequences. So there's some pattern to those numbers. This first one, 2, 4, 6, 8, that's going up by 2s. And then 2, 5, 10, 17, that's actually going by 3 here, 5 here, and 7 here. And we can see that 3 to 5 is 2, 5 to 7 is 2. So that number that we're adding to it is going up by 2 every time. So there is a pattern there. Write a sequence to represent the total price of the data plan. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here, we're going to look at our price, and we're going to write a sequence for this section of our data. So we're basically just going to list that out. So we're going to say 20, 40, 60, and then we'll say dot, 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 which means the pattern could continue on. Here's another vocabulary word, common difference. The difference between consecutive terms in an arithmetic sequence. So the sequence you wrote in item 3 has a common difference. Identify the common difference. Okay, so when we're looking at this sequence that we wrote here, the common difference is basically how much is it changing by every time. So it's either going up by a certain amount or it's going down by a certain amount. So what is that amount that we're changing by every time? And so in this case, 20 to 40 is 20, 40 to 60 is 20, 60 to 80 is 20. So that common difference is 20 every time. Okay, then we have this next page. I want you to pause the video right here. And what I want you to do in this first section here is I want you to write down as many words as you can think of for each of these symbols. So stop the video and write down as many words as you can for each one of these symbols. Okay, so if you actually look at the end of this, here's a list of a bunch of words for each of these symbols. So you can pause the video and you can write down all of these words in your boxes along with the ones that you wrote yourself. And what we need to do is we need to be able to look at these words and know that they go with these certain symbols because we're going to use them to write equations. Okay, so you fill that chart in, and then we're going to come here and we're going to do a couple of examples of what we're talking about. Okay, so we have something here that you want to pay attention to, switch words. So the words then, into, and from are actually going to switch the order when those words are said. So, that'll make sense here in a minute when we do an example. And then we also have words for parentheses or grouping symbols. So first one here, the difference of 10 and a number z. So if we're looking at the word difference, difference means subtraction, and it's the difference of 10 and a number z. So a number z is just the variable z. So we want the difference of 10 and z. So we're going to say 10 minus z. Next one, 10 less than, okay, so less is subtraction, then is a switch word, okay? And then it says a number z. So that's going to be the variable z. So what that then does is that then is going to switch the order of these two things that we're subtracting. So 10 less than a number z. And you can think of it like numbers. So if I said that I have $5 and you have 2 less than me, then you have $3 because you have 2 less than me. So it switches that subtraction. So instead of 10 minus z here, we're going to say z minus 10. And then we have 3/4 of a number x. Of is going to be multiplication. Let's use the dot so we don't get confused. And then a number x is the variable x. So 3/4 x. And that's multiplication. You're getting a pay raise. You're going to be making $9 per hour plus $100 a day sales bonus. And then it says you made $90. Okay, and so what we're looking for here is we're looking for just the amount of pay in one day. Okay, so just the pay in one day. So anytime you see the word per, that's going to be multiplication, $9 per hour. We don't know how many hours it is, so we need to have a variable that's going to stand in for that hour. So we're going to say $9 per hour, so 9 times x, plus $100 a day sales bonus. So I know that that's a little confusing because it makes you think it's going to happen a bunch of times, and it would if we were talking about more than one day, but we're just talking one day. So we have this $100 sales bonus, and then it says you made $190. So our total, so this is a total, is going to be 190. So the total amount of money that you made in one day was $190. 5 band members share equally X, the money from their gig. So 5 band members share equally X. So if we think about if I have $100 and I'm going to share that equally with 10 people. So I have $100 that I'm going to share equally with 10 people. So I'm going to split that into 10 parts. Okay, I'm sharing it equally. So I'm going to end up dividing that 100 by 10. So here we're going to say x over 5 because we're taking the total amount of money that they have and we're dividing it by the 5 band members. Jose is joining a gym. He pays $20 a month plus $3 for each aerobics class. He spent $35 last month. Okay, so this is our total, $35. And what we need to pay attention to is that's for 1 month. Okay, so we know it's going to equal 35, and that's for 1 month, just 1 month. So this $20 a month is only happening one time because we're only talking about 1 month. Okay, so we're saying $20 plus $3 for each aerobics class. What we don't know is we don't know how many aerobic classes they took. So we need a variable for that x. So we're going to say $3 times the number of aerobics classes, and that's going to be a total of 35.